PharmaPhobic is powered by Achieve the Lifestyle, a company dedicated to helping you empower your health, redefine your lifestyle, and all for the health of it. You're listening to PharmaPhobic, where we challenge the state of health in America. I'm Janie, a physician assistant, and I've seen how healthcare keeps people dependent instead of truly healthy.
And I'm Dan, a veteran turned fitness pro here to uncover the truth and explore simple and sustainable health solutions. From big pharma to big food, we're exposing the conflicts of interest keeping us sick and finding better ways to take back our health.
No fluff, no gimmicks, just real talk, real solutions, and a little bit of fun along the way. Hi, and welcome to another episode of the PharmaPhobic podcast, powered by Achieve the Lifestyle, where we work to, I'm going to mess this up. We work to help you become the healthiest, strongest, most capable version of yourself. Thank you.
Good job.
Was strongest supposed to be first?
Yes. But we're getting there.
So it's because I overthink and then I stumble, and I just posted a video yesterday of me doing dumbbell box jumps, and I'm like, it's the worst movement to overthink on.
Jane, so she wanted to practice the intro, and the thing with us is that we're polar opposites in this regard. Janie does very well with scripts, and she makes them her own. And if you script me, I sound terrible. Like I'm literally,
because you just turn into monotone.
Yeah,
read.
I'm like, hello guys, welcome. I can't. I'm better off the top of the dome, and I'd rather do multiple takes of it off the top of the dome than be scripted, because I don't know what it is. Even when I present, that's another
I take
one.
a script and it's kind of like line dance. Like, yeah, I'll do it, but then I'll add a little flair.
Yeah, I know. You do really well with that. Even when I present too, people that really put their presentations on the slides, I just put words and bullet points so that it prompts what I want to say, not so that I'm reading something off the thing. So I don't know. I've always been like that. It's something. It's a talent, really. It's a forte, as the French would say.
Sure. Okay. All right. So Dan, this episode, I wanted to pose a question to you, and then just kind of see where we go from there. So, what adventure we get on after I read this?
Top of the dome piece.
Yeah.
I like it.
Okay. All right. So do you know who Hippocrates is?
Yes.
Okay. So he is credited to be the father of modern medicine. Okay. And he was a Greek physician. I have the dates, 450 to 380 BC. Okay. And I saw this quote.
Wait. 480 to 3. He's BC?
Yeah.
Okay. Just checking if it was AD or BC.
I said BC.
Okay. And it's Greek, so yeah. Okay. I heard AD somewhere in there. I don't know. Okay, continue. Carry on.
Okay. All right. So I saw this quote, and then I fact checked it to see if it really was him who said it, because in the world of AI and everything, when you see something, you have to really make sure that is truly said by somebody. And so from what I found, it is. If I'm wrong, somebody please tell me. But here's the quote. Everyone wants to heal until the medicine shows up in the form of discipline. And so, agree or disagree?
Wait, everybody wants to heal until the medicine shows up in the form of discipline.
Yeah.
He was speaking like that back then?
Oh, yeah. No, he was. I did a little bit of.
No, but he was using those. He used the word discipline. That's a dirty word.
Stop. So I did look a little bit into him. Like I know of him. I took the Hippocratic oath, right? And so I knew of him, right? But I've never deep dove into him, and I still haven't. But I just looked up some little facts for him. So he was kind of one of the first physicians to move away from attributing and you could agree or disagree with this, attributing the ailments of the human body as like as a spiritual thing, being like, because he was Greek, so polytheistic, right? So many gods that he believed in, and so he kind of moved away from that, saying that the human body has the ability to heal itself if we treat it appropriately. Okay. he did, and we've moved from some of his practices, but a lot of the current practices are taken from his, but we've moved away from some of the things he did because he was a believer in the humors of the body. I don't remember this 100%, but like bile is attributed to, I can't remember. It's like bile's attributed to something, blood's attributed to something, urine's attributed to something, and it's like anger and, so the humors of the body, he was really big into that, but he was also a huge proponent of like, the body contains the power within itself to heal. And he avoided a lot of drugs and surgeries. Most of the drugs back then would have been herbs and stuff. He avoided a lot of that until absolutely necessary, which I think is very in line with how I think modern medicine should be. Like, let's avoid using drugs until absolutely necessary, right? And he was also quoted to say, if you want to learn about the health of a population, look at the air they breathe, the water they drink, and the places where they live. And so in the previous episode, we just talked about the location of where you live could impact your health. If you want to know about that, listen to the previous one. But he was just huge into moving towards, hey, the human body's amazing. It has the ability to heal itself, to present different ways. Let's learn more about that, the internal processes, and just attributing like, so I'm having a hard time articulating this, but like a good example of, and he still thought fever was itself an illness, where we know that fever is not an illness. The fever's coming from something, right? And so it's kind of that concept of the body's showing us something's wrong by, hey, I have a fever. Let's find where it's coming from. Treat that, and then the fever will go away. Okay? And so back to the original question or quote that he said, and I think this is very much in line with what we talk about on a regular basis and the issue a lot of people have today with their baseline health is everyone wants to heal. So everyone wants to feel better until the solution or the medicine shows up in the form of discipline. So we can take weight loss. Everyone wants to lose weight until the remedy to succeed in weight loss is being disciplined with diet and exercise, sleep, stress management, hydration.
Yeah, and there's a lot of, reminds me of the whole, the push against measuring and weighing food right now and all that sort of thing and tracking food. Because people want it to be this very intuitive thing, like, oh, it should be intuitive eating. But we're dealing with people that don't know the way, what it looks like to eat.
I think that big, and I know what you're talking about, I think that the big movement is to avoid tracking your food indefinitely and becoming obsessed with it. Like you take a scale to go out to eat at dinner, like at a restaurant.
People do that?
Yes.
So
that's where it kind of... You have to tread lightly into this because unfortunately, I understand what you're saying, and it would be great if everyone could be with your mindset on that. But unfortunately, especially women, they are so disordered with their eating, not eating disorders, not an actual mental illness, but disordered eating to where they become really rigid and everything has to weigh this much. So. Yes, but I understand what you're saying, and it is always beneficial to track your food at some point, but the goal is to then track your food and use that information to become intuitive and learn your body, learn your hunger cues, learn how to appropriately nourish your body, and then move forward.
But that's not what this push is talking about.
Okay.
Because you have to track to know what you're missing or what you're not eating or where you're overeating. So we have to create awareness around the situation, right?
Right.
How do you do that without ever measuring and weighing?
Well, no, but that's what I'm saying. And so, yes, there's an appropriate time to do it, but the goal is to not do it forever.
Yeah. And I get it. Like if you're taking a food scale out to eat, to measure and weigh what you're going to eat, first of all, two things here, because this is why we're on a podcast, because you and I are about nuance and context. And we want to discuss this as deeply as possible, right? So 2 things. If your health is that in jeopardy that you really need to be on top of what you're eating and you have to measure and weigh everything like that because your health is that disordered, then honestly, I'll take the damn food scale out to eat. I'm for it. You know what I mean? Now, the other side of that is, I would say if your health is that disordered and we're going out to eat, I'd be like, fam, you should probably be eating at home 100% of the time if we're in that deep of a health burden, which I was having this discussion yesterday with my father. But anyway, the other side of that is that we're also looking to be healthier. We're not looking to create more issues for ourselves. So if you're obsessing about this to a level where it's becoming unhealthy, like everything, then we're messing up too. Then.
Right. So I think that it made the video I saw of a woman taking her scale out to eat just made me think of, she has the obsessiveness of a bodybuilder who's getting ready to get on stage and go and win money, who's trying to also balance having, a social life or like going out for like a family celebration, which you could be like, okay, but this was just a person, they weren't going to on stage. This wasn't for monetary gain. This was because they were trying to stick within a window, right?
Yeah.
And this is the problem that I see with fitness establishments, like, I'll just metabolic meltdown, CrossFits, having macro challenges or fitness challenges, like 30-day, stick to it every single day, and whoever wins or loses the most weight wins. And it's like, screw off with that, really, because you're just you're not creating awareness of a healthy lifestyle and for that person to progress on. Not to mention, these places are notorious for drastically cutting calories while trying to have people do high intensity interval training multiple days a week because they're paying out the butt. And so they're trying to get their money's worth.
And we're jumping into unsustainability, which is, we don't want to do anything. Like, you could be like, hey, I'm going to add these habits for this certain amount of time. But we got to remember that things have to be sustainable. It's a long haul, and we want to be doing these things consistently. And at that point, we're falling into unsustainability. It's unsustainable to drastically cut your calories like that. And then it's unsustainable to go on these sprints, quote unquote, of hitting 6 days of crazy workouts a week. It's just not. And what you're going to get from that is a big old rebound is what's going to happen. Or you'll get hurt in the process.
Right.
Or you'll burn yourself out.
So let's take a step back to that quote. Discipline. Let's define discipline, because I think that, like the podcast episode we had about health, like everyone has a different definition of health, right? Everyone can have a different definition or view of discipline, because some people could look at somebody who is disordered in their eating and being really rigid, be like, oh, you're so disciplined, right? Whereas, and then they're like, well, I can't achieve that because I can't be disciplined like that. So when you hear disciplined, or when you talk to people about, hey, you need more discipline in your life, what's your definition of that?
I think people, they confuse motivation with discipline. And I'm not motivated is what I hear more to do that, which really, I think people are more aware to it that motivation is this very temporary thing, and discipline is the permanent thing where you're like doing things despite thoughts, feelings, and emotions about it. You're just, boom, I'm doing this. That's what we would define as discipline, when you're doing stuff even on days that you, quote unquote, don't feel like it. So that's one. The average person thinks that it's motivation that's making you stick to your plan versus, no, it's discipline.
Right, but what is discipline?
Acting despite thoughts, feelings, and emotions. That's what I'm going to define it as. Is that the Webster's dictionary? No.
Well, I'm not. I was just wondering.
But yeah, that's what I define it as. Yeah. Like, I'm not in the mood to eat my, food that I cooked at home, but I'm going to do it anyway. Right. I don't feel like working out despite being, I'm recovered, I'm good to go, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Right. And would you say that discipline can be used to a fault? Like, people can be unhealthy levels of discipline? Yeah, there you go.
Ooh, man, that's tough. yes, everything's possible. It's, we think in spectrums, and you get to the point where you're being so healthy that you're coming back around to unhealthy. We've discussed this before. Let me think of a guy like David Goggins, probably.
Very disciplined.
Extreme levels of discipline. But I'd argue that he's probably doing some permanent damage in what he's doing, the volume of work that he does and all this stuff. He's probably hurting himself more than he is building himself up at this point.
Right.
We could argue that maybe he's not. I'm not looking at his blood work and stuff, but in my eyes, for the average person, for us mere mortals, if we start doing things like he's doing, I feel like we're going to be tearing ourselves down more than we're going to be building ourselves up. So there's a level of, hey, I do 6 workouts a week and I don't miss. You might be tearing yourself up more than that's discipline you're adhering.
So, yes. And so I think that if you're going to be disciplined with, just for example, your diet and lifestyle, right? Or diet and exercise, you need to equally be disciplined in your sleep.
Yep.
Equally disciplined in your stress management, and equally disciplined in your awareness and being in tune with your body. Okay. And what do I mean by that? Meaning that you need to be disciplined in all your things. And I'm not trying to overwhelm people, but what wins, right? And I would say being disciplined into learning and listening to your body is going to win, because then on the days where you don't feel like working out, is it because I'm just like, meh, I'm tired. Not tired, but I had a crap day. I don't feel like doing it. But you've recovered, you've eaten enough, the energy is there, you just mentally don't feel it. And then when you start working out, you're like, oh, here it is. Or are you disciplined within being in tune with your body when you're just like, okay, my sleep was trash last night. I know I'm not going to get a good workout in, and it's actually going to tear me down more than it builds me up. So let me just go for a walk instead. And I would say the ultimate achievement is being disciplined in that regard, being disciplined in, I'm going to say that word a million times this episode, just heads up, but being so in tune with yourself that you know when you need to go, when you need to sit down, and then you are disciplined in those areas as well. Because some people, and I've talked with my friends Danielle and Laura about this, some people need just to pull back, sit down, chill, okay? Because they're doing too much.
I'm seeing a lot of that.
Yeah. And we've talked about that. Women tend to be more violators of this than men.
Yeah, I think in a couple episodes
because
back,
we do stuff for men.
Well, men get into some stupid men get into some freaking
But I don't know.
stuff.
I hope this isn't confusing.
No, well, we talked about this a couple episodes ago where we were talking about, hey, sit down. Like, chick, sit down.
Yeah. So I think what this Hippocrates quote was saying, you need to be disciplined in your health. But where I think people get confused is when they say, I'm going to be disciplined in my health, meaning I'm going to do this exercise like this, regardless of how I feel. I'm going to eat like this, regardless of how I feel. And that's where trouble happens.
That's another incidence where you could be too disciplined. You're eating the same stuff all the time. You're not, and then you're like nutrient deficient in other things.
And so this is where disordered eating comes in, because people could be too rigid or disciplined to where they're either trying to adhere to a diet where they eat too little, right?
Which is super common.
Right. Or one of the goals for intuitive eating is to learn your hunger cues, right? Mm-hmm. Because hunger doesn't always come as growl in my tummy.
Yeah.
Okay. Dan can attest to this. For me, one of my very first hunger cues is I become a little bit less patient.
Attitude would be the word. Attitude is the word that comes to mind. Rewind. We're going back in time here real quick, guys. Okay. Janie and I, when we first started dating, as the relationship evolves, you start doing certain things together. One of them.
It was he wanted to hang out. And I was like, dude, I got to go grocery shopping.
Yeah, exactly. And I was a grocery shopper. It was a Sunday. We were like, we got to go. I'm like, I got to go grocery shopping too, so I could get ready for the week. So let's hit this grocery store up. And that's, this is a couple months in. It was like 2 months in, probably month and a half in. So we're like, we're going to go grocery shopping together. parentheses, Janie and I were basically married from the first day that we got together. She would not let me leave the house. So anyway.
Oh, that is so not true.
She didn't want me to go anywhere. It's like, where are you going? I'm going to jiu-jitsu. Well, you're coming right back, right? That's how it was. It's my story and I'm sticking to it. Anyway,
Lies.
we went grocery shopping and I'm noticing as we're getting the groceries, Janie's like, oh, this lady's in the way. Oh my God. What the is she? And I was like, yo, she's angry, fam. Like it like the anger just kept rising. Like, why is she in the way? And I'm just like, give me a second. And I ran over to the other side of the grocery store and I grabbed some of that ready to eat sushi. P.S. Don't eat that now because there's a whole bunch of stuff in there. This is 7 years, 2018. So a long time ago now. And I ran back and opened it and told, eat this.
He put a piece in my mouth.
Guess what happened right after she had the little grocery store sushi? It was over. It was over. Everything. Hey, we're back to normal. Oh yeah, I need to buy this. I need to buy that. You love
telling that story.
Yes, because it was very evident. You were a Snickers commercial. It was crazy.
I could go into the fact that, and we'll talk about this. The whole seed oil hype out there. There is evidence, not some, but there is evidence showing that high consumption of seed oils can lead to mitochondrial insufficiency, which one of the downstream effects of that is hanger, because hanger is relatively new. And the fact that people get hangry is a sign of
metabolic dysregulation.
Yes.
Yeah. Because you're basically you're acting like your blood sugar levels are dropping. But they're not. And they're still fairly high. Right. And you're gonna to feel normal is gonna come at a higher blood sugar and it rises over the years until you're unfortunately close to diabetes.
And would you say that because Dan and I have made the choice to really cut out seed oils from the majority of our intake, and would you say that since we've done that, that's changed?
Yes.
Yes.
100. There's a lot. When we get into the seed oil thing and we really do a deep dive in it, because, listen.
I've read the book about it. Dan's still reading it.
I'm still reading the book. But I was the one who brought this up into the house for another reason. And then we jumped in it with both feet and we decided to try this out. And I can say 100% there's something there, observational in us. But there's absolutely something there. We're not the only ones talking about this. There's plenty of people talking out there. But now reading this book after a couple of years of going this way, I'm like, I'm so glad we made this decision.
Yeah.
The thing with it is that, yes, that has changed for you. And amongst other things, when we get into it, there's a bunch of other stuff that has changed that I'm like, man, this is some people should really consider this whole seed oil elimination thing. But for us, when we're working with people, that's not where we start.
Right.
Because obviously, if you're eating from a drive-through, if you're eating out all the time, if you're like, oh, you're eating carb-only meals and you're in this disordered eating pattern, not eating disordered, just eating this where you're not having full meals, you're not eating enough protein, then we don't need to talk about seed oils till we balance all that out. Okay, so we don't start there. The other thing that I like to tell people, if you want to have the seed oil conversation, you better be ready to talk about other stuff, because this is going to open your eyes to a whole bunch of other stuff that you might not be ready for. You need to be ready to talk about aliens. You need to be ready to talk about new world orders and all this other stuff, agendas of keeping people sick. Listen, we talk about this stuff here in the PharmaPhobic podcast, and we tried to microdose it to you because this stuff is real. So the seed oil conversation is not for day one of the health pursuit. It might be for like year 2 or 3.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
But what I was, before we went off on that tangent about hunger cues, one of the things about, and I didn't think about this, somebody brought this to my attention, with following a meal plan and having to eat certain things can be useful for some people because they need to get their intake up, right? Or I've seen some, and I don't work with people who have had eating disorders, but I know some dietitians do. They kind of work on just, okay, let's eat at these times just to, like, even if you binge, let's just get, to learn. Okay. But for some people, specifically more of the disordered eating, the orthorexia type people, is they eat on these plans and they'll eat their full meal. Even they'll surpass their feeling of being satiated, or they'll eat even when they're not hungry, which sometimes is appropriate to help build up your hunger cues. But you can also go the other end where the goal is to listen to your body, eat till like you're 80% satisfied and be able to stop, even if there's a whole plate of food in front of you, right? But sometimes when you get on a plan and you're like, I have to eat this amount, I have to eat this amount, you sort of override and negate the utilization of your brain and your gut communicating. And the goal is to get that back on track. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Because for most people, your consumption isn't going to be exactly the same every day. Maybe let's use us for example, because I can't speak on other people, but like we have a really big meal Saturday nights, right? And so what I tend to do is have a big breakfast on Saturdays, because then we come here, we do stuff, we're running around midday. We may have a small meal, like a snack in the middle of the day, and then have a big dinner. And then the next day, I'm not eating breakfast, lunch, because my consumption is a little bit different because of this big meal. Now, during the weeks, we're a little bit more regimented because our intake is more consistent throughout the day. But we really try just to like appreciate our hunger cues, understand that our body is being nourished differently on different days. So every day isn't going to look exactly the same. And sometimes when people become too disciplined, they eat when they're not hungry. They continue to eat even though they're satisfied. Or maybe they eat and then an hour later they're hungry and they're like, well, my next meal's not due for another few hours, therefore I can't eat. And it's like, maybe you should have something more. Maybe you need to recognize that your meal wasn't that sufficient, because you shouldn't be hungry an hour after eating.
Yeah. Especially if you had a well-balanced meal. That usually happens.
Especially if you're very active.
Yeah.
And so that's what I've noticed, because I've been working on increasing my calories, especially my carbohydrates, because I'm doing jujitsu more because the academy we go to is closer to home. And I'm seeing that when the days I go into the office after lunch, an hour later, I'm like, shit, yeah. I'm hungry. So I'm using that information to adjust accordingly. And then your girl ain't afraid of snacks. So
snacks. Which we should talk about that, because when people hear snacks, they start thinking about BS stuff versus what you are actually having for a snack.
Yeah.
But we'll get into that.
So disciplined, I think, is one of those things that is like the Pac-Man analogy. You can go so far one way that you come out the other end and ended up doing the opposite thing of what you wanted to do.
What about people that are disciplined with not eating?
Yeah.
Now we're talking. I'm talking about older people now specifically, but a lot of people do it.
So I don't know if that's disciplined.
I mean, hey, listen, I know they're hungry, but they just like, no, I don't have lunch.
Yeah.
No, I don't have breakfast.
So I think that the fasting, and we've spoken on this here and there, but fasting, I don't think is necessarily a bad thing if utilized appropriately.
Yeah.
How do you utilize it appropriately? You do research into it, because fasting can have benefits spiritually. So they do fasting for Ramadan. Right? Mm-hmm. Right?
Jewish people do it too for the high holidays.
Yeah. And Catholicism does it as well. There's some fasting for Lent. I do think that there is some, and we've talked to our pastor about fasting, because we talked about like how that woman almost fell out at church because of it. Not because she was touched by anything, but because she just didn't eat. But so I think that, and I've been reading about some autophagy, so cell death of bad things that happens with fasting, but this is like fasting done strategically.
Yeah, I like the Phoenix Protocol stuff, which is the extreme fast for cancer treatments.
Yeah. All too often, I see people who have diabetes or obesity, or maybe they just want to lose some weight. So like, I'm just going to fast 16/8. And it's like, okay, but what? But like, did you strategize what you're going to eat inside your eating window? Yeah. Did you strategize what you're going to break your fast with?
Ooh, that's important.
And
that's
are you monitoring your activity while you're doing this fast? Or did you, because a lot of times people do this, hey, I'm going to start fasting and I'm also going to start exercising. And it's like, oh shit. Can your body handle all that change at once?
Yeah. And well, I mean, and I think more than that, I get, yes, people out there in the mainstream, the normies, they're in love with the intermittent fasting protocols, which is like, fam, we're moving past that.
Yeah. And
a lot of y'all need to eat, my boys and girls.
Right. And so Danielle spoke about this. If you're a menstruating female and you're active, fasting is not likely to be beneficial for you.
Yep. And you're a lot of 99% of, like, listen, the average person that we're going to come across in the mainstream that we need to help them improve their health for the long term, a lot of them are going to be undernourished. You're eating a lot of calories, but they're not nutritious calories. So you're not nourishing your body. So if I drop a fast on you on top of undernourishing yourself and being undernourished, then what are we doing? We're continuing the process of undernourishment, because I need to open your feeding window so that you have time to get the adequate nutrients that you need so that your body works better than it's working right now.
Yeah, and I don't think people realize to get the adequate amount of nourishment, especially if they're active, inside that eating window that they've restricted, takes a lot of strategy.
Yeah, you got to strategize.
And pre-plan.
Yep. And the busier pre-plan. You like, just lay it out. The busier you quote unquote are, this is where I tell people, like, fam, you might need a Sunday afternoon, sit down for 10 to 15 minutes, look at your calendar for the week, and project out, hey, I'm going to work out here, here, and here. I'm going to eat here, here, and here, and lay it out and put it on your schedule if you truly want to do this. Because if you let the chaos of the day ensue and you just, flying by the seat of your pants every day, chances are you're going to fail.
Yeah, and this is tricky because sometimes when people, if they're coming from a place where they haven't really looked at their nutritional intake and they haven't been really active, and then they fast, they start exercising, there's some positive reinforcement because, weight loss happens initially. But it's not because you're revving up your metabolism, the exchange of energy is happening, had a slight deficit so that you're losing fat, you're utilizing and losing fat. It's your body's going, oh no, and it's like, boom, boom, get rid of it. And then there's a hard stop or a plateau and possible stubborn loss. You're feeling like you're fighting it, or regain.
Yep. And that regain happens a lot with people, especially if they fall into this thing where they're not eating appropriately and not strategizing out their food a little bit more,
And a lot of it's water weight at the start.
And a lot of this is where discipline, when we're talking about the actual application of it, it's like, listen, if you need to pre-plan your week, if you need to sit there and be strategic because you're going to be really busy, then we need that. We need to do that.
Yeah.
And every Sunday or Saturday or whatever, you're going to pull up your schedule and you're going to sit here and be like, I got all these meetings. This is where I'm going to, the kids have all this. This is where these are the openings that I have in my schedule where I'm going to plug in a workout, where I'm going to plug in my meals, where I'm going to listen. Everybody's life is different. Some people don't have a lot of constraints and they can just fly by the seat of their pants.
Yeah, and I think
some people can't.
And I like how you say plug in your meals, because I know some people are like, I don't eat at work because I can't, because I have meetings. And it's like, eating is important. Put a mealtime in there. I heard a nurse talking, because I was in the clinic yesterday. I heard a nurse talking to a patient calling. They're like, well, she has these times available. Patient said something I didn't know was on the phone. She takes lunch at this time, so she's not available. Now, if it was truly an emergency, like somebody walked in with chest pain and I wouldn't be like, I'm sorry, I'm eating my lunch. No, I would address it. Okay. But if this is somebody, trying to schedule an appointment and I have other availability, I protect my lunchtime, because that is time for me to fuel my body, nourish my body, so then I can be more sharp, focused, and ready to handle what that next patient has coming in.
Yep. And if you're skipping lunch, you're arguably, especially when you're making decisions that could be life and death,
right,
or that could have lasting effects. You want to protect yourself so that you're sharp constantly.
Yeah, and I also want people to think about, it's not just work. Like, you know, you skip all meals through work because it's busy. You're back to back to back with whatever it is. Okay. And then you're like, oh, but I made it through. I was like, you can't tell me I need to make time for lunch because I can get through work just fine. Okay. Okay.
Your hormones are
right.
wreck.
But also, what does it look like when you get home?
And what does it look like after months of doing that?
Right. Do you get home and do you have time to give as much of work to your family? Or are you just totally spent by the time you get home because you didn't eat all day? And then you're just like, I can't do anything. I'm too tired to work out. I don't have the patience with my kids. I'm snapping at them. I feel like I can't stay out of the pantry. Well, then let's look at your day.
Facts. I use myself as an example here. You know, when we're in season down here in Florida, like all the snowbirds are here, and I have these clients that live part of the year up north and part of the year down here, so I don't have them year round. But when I'm in season, quote unquote, when they're down here during the fall and the winter, I'm busy. Like I'm like 13-hour days. I could book a day of 13 sessions back to back. Guys, that's a long that's a long day.
It's 13 hours.
And that's 13 different people or groups of people that I'm going to interact with that and I'm more extroverted than not. So I enjoy the conversations that we're having. I'm learning about financial markets. I'm learning about golf. Having all these range of conversations with my clients. I love it. But I started telling Janie because I noticed in the latter part of the day, I'm not as sharp. You know, and I'm not as like coaching the same, and I don't want to do that. I'm watering down the experience for my clients. So I started telling Janie, I'm gonna have to look at capping my days and saying no, even though I don't like doing that either, to people. Be like, hey, I can't book you today. I'm fully booked out, and calling that at 8 or 9 hours, maybe even 10 sometimes, depends, I'll play with it. But that thing of doing 13 in a day, it's not great because I'm not operating at my best. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? But even looking at a day like that, when I see that calendar, I'm like, whoa, tomorrow's going to be crazy. But I'm still looking for, I can work out here, or I'm kicking that workout to the next day because I don't have as many the next day, but I'm going to eat lunch here. Like I'm strategizing that way because I know if I go 13 in a row without eating, I'm going to be dookie. I'm going to be a terrible trainer by halfway through the day. So I know, like, listen, putting yourself, having the discipline, having the discipline to take care of yourself so that you can better take care of others becomes important on a day like that.
So I think that the most important thing and this quote talks about the solution to your ailments, wanting to heal, wanting to achieve your goal requires discipline, but not discipline discipline in exercise and diet, but more so discipline in your mindset of taking care of all these things and not going too far in or too little in on stuff.
Yeah.
Right? So
you recognize
and I say this to clients, and I say this to patients. Everything's an annoying balance. And I get it, and it's hard. That's one of the reasons why I love helping people, because let's help you figure it out, because everyone's balance is going to be different depending on your life. And it may be different. It may look different now than it will in 2 years from now, especially people with kids. Your balance when you have small children is way different than your balance when your kids are off in college.
Yeah.
Yeah. Different demands, right?
No doubt.
And so,
this is where like somebody like my client, shout out Kara, if she's listening to, and your friend, if
she was my friend.
I wish I would go on seminars with her and be like, how do you do it? How do you do it, fam? 5 kids, a career, and she's jacked, swole, lifting weights, strong as hell. So how do you do it?
Fought a bear.
Yeah, like share that with other people, because it's crazy. 5 kids is crazy now.
Yeah,
that's a lot to handle and work.
So I think we can use her as an example. It's multiple levels of discipline, right?
Yeah,
so
she's very
disciplined.
Very disciplined.
So she's disciplined in knowing that her health will filter down to her kids.
Yep.
In regards to the healthier she is, the more apt she is to take care of them. She's also modeling behavior for them. And she is disciplined in the fact that she and her husband utilized their resources to purchase gym equipment to have at home. Mm-hmm. Okay? That is a discipline.
Yep.
She didn't spend money on other stuff. She bought gym equipment because she knows going to a gym to work out when you have 5 kids is going to take time away, when you can do it at home, thus easier to get it in, is available 24 hours a day. And also, who sees her work out? Her kids.
Yep.
Right? Because it's at home. She's disciplined in the fact that she makes time to get it done. But also, she understands that life happens. So she's not doing a 7-day-a-week program. You know, she's doing something that she can be flexible with. She hired a coach.
Hello. Hi, guys. Right here.
To be able to say, hey, you know, maybe like her kids are all a certain... She was wild. She had a lot of kids. Boom, 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 boom. But maybe when they get older, like, hey, my schedule's changing. I was working out X amount of days a week. Can we modify it to this? Right? Yeah. So she knows that she needs a coach to help fit her workouts to her, not her fit into a program.
I think I also, a lot of, you know, what I write for her, she lives 4 days a week. That's the program, that's a good amount of training. Me personally, I prefer 3 for long term, but she wanted 4. I as a woman, I would be like, I think you guys can handle a little bit more volume, so 4 it is. If it were a dude, I'd be like, nah, fam, you're doing 3. And you're going to split them like this. I'd be probably a little bit more strict if a dude had the type of chaos that she has. Let's say, I don't know, a CEO or a guy that's also very involved in raising 5 kids. So with her, a lot of the stuff, it's very suggestive. It's like, hey, do what you can. Here's the program. I don't want you to think that you need to be ultra rigid with following this. So this is where we bring the discipline, because there could be a spectrum. I'm doing what's on paper, whatever. I'm going in.
That's me.
That's my wife. If it's on paper, she's gonna do it all exact. Like, it's so funny because there are better alternatives, and I'm always like, you know, this is a better choice for you right here. He's like, but that's not what's on the program. Then there are people like that.
So in my defense, because I would like to bring my defense to the table for that.
Okay, go.
He tells me, you do know that there's a better alternative to this, as I'm already doing what was written.
Well, that's when I see you doing it. And I'm like,
cool. That would have been nice to know before I started.
You could have asked. But here's the thing. There are 2 types of people in this world. There are 2 types of people in this world. There are people that need to follow every single instruction, regardless of what the instructions entail. And there are people that look at instructions and figure out ways how to defy the instructions, and they marry each other, okay? Dan, not a rule follower. Janie, very much a rule follower. So that's what you get.
Or just reads instructions, directions, that's all. No. You just don't even read them.
I do what I want.
But anyway, I think discipline can be thrown around, and you can sort of cling on to me being disciplined when it's actually doing harm for yourself.
Yeah. I think finishing with Kara as an example, she's been very consistent for I've had her for 3 years now. So she doesn't miss a workout really. And if she does, there's like crazy circumstances. Like, hey, this happened, I miss a workout. I'm like, man, it doesn't even matter because you've hit so many workouts over the years that it's like a deload. That's actually good for you to miss those workouts. But that's something where she strategized so much and has built a level of discipline into her life with all the chaos that ensues with having a career and 5 children that it's hard for her to miss. Yeah. Because she strategized so much. So this is where like it's going to take a little bit more than you think. And you're going to need a higher level of discipline than you think so that you can be successful long term, which is what matters. I mean, she's strong as shit.
Yeah. Well, I would argue that you need to be disciplined or whatever, but you need to understand that you need to make the change yourself, right? Because I think a lot of people, when they hear that, oh, you mean I can't just take a pill to achieve this goal, that I have to change what I'm doing, I think it's being open to understand, like, okay, here's what's expected of me to achieve the goal, but to also be able to enjoy my life, raise my kids, work, prioritize my career, and I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
Right? But I think a lot of people are just like, but I don't want to get up that early.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that.
Yeah. You know what? And that's something, or one that I've run across with people that I work with, where they eat out a lot. Like every meal is from outside. They don't cook ever. And, there's people with resources, so they can do that sort of thing. They're very well off, and they can eat wherever they want, whenever they want. So they do that instead of, but I keep telling them, I was like, listen, long term, I don't know, and I don't think anybody can get healthier in a significant way if everything you eat comes from a restaurant. Like, that's just not a good long-term strategy. I don't care if you're like, but I'm eating from this restaurant and I'm ordering this and that. Listen, there's too much temptation when you're going out to restaurants all the time.
And I think part of the journey is understanding how to nourish yourself. Therefore, how do you put together meals? How do you make things?
Exactly.
How do you understand what foods are what, and then you can make more of an informed decision when you go out. So this can go back to a lot of older people who really rally behind, I didn't eat anything all day.
Yeah.
Or we've talked about before, like oatmeal or
having these like old school things that they were told were healthy.
Yeah.
These Ansel Keys type health foods.
And you can change. Anyone can change. I grew up with Carnation instant breakfast.
Yeah, listen.
You can change.
With people like that, like I am like, if they decrease their outside food intake by half, 50%.
Yeah.
Hey, 50, let's say you have, 20 meals a week. If 10 of them are at home and 10 of them are out, for somebody like him, the person I have in mind, you're talking about an extreme boost in health benefits.
Yeah.
Because I mean, man, every meal out is crazy. And if we budget it over the year, like I said, this person's very, very fortunate. If we budget over, you probably have a living chef at that point, or somebody who cooks a lot for you, when you put it all together. But anyway, which is kind of what I'm always trying to push him towards. But anyway, discipline. You're going to need more than you think. That's what we're trying to get at here. You're going to need more than you think. And taking the time to figure out what your process looks like with where you're at right now is probably one of the most valuable things you can do. Because I always tell people, I was just having this conversation yesterday, getting to the gym, it's hard for a lot of people. Harder for some people, easier for others. But out of everything that you can do for maximizing your health, getting to the gym is going to be the easiest one. Eating better, adjusting your lifestyle so that it actually promotes health and wellness. All that stuff comes with these like emotional attachments and these, fallacies and things that people have a hard time letting go of and strategizing on to avoid pitfalls that they may, and then next thing you know, it's like you're not going anywhere. Yeah, you're doing all these workouts because you literally took the easiest step in the process. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So sitting down and strategizing more and being like, what do I need to do to be able to stick to these principles is very valuable process to do.
Yeah. And I also think that one of the biggest things that Hippocrates was a fan of, I don't know, like I knew him, but is known to have said was that the body contains the power within it to heal itself. And I've said this before, I do not think we give the human body enough credit. And so, whether you want to believe from an evolutionary standpoint that we were evolved to do this, or you want to believe in a higher power, we are made in the image of God to be able to heal itself, I think that whatever your belief is, we need to recognize that we do not give our body enough credit. And in order to let our body do what it's made to do, we need to give it the things that it was made to consume. It was made to consume food from this earth.
Yeah.
Animals from this earth. It was made to consume water. It was made to move. We do not walk on four extremities. We are bipedal. We are upright. We are not covered in hair. We sweat through our skin. We are made to move continuously over long distance in the form of walking. People who are like, oh, I hate walking. Oh my God, when we were at the Metallica concert and we were leaving, we decided to park for free a mile and a half away.
Mile and a half. So we did for free 99.
So I
didn't even
walked.
know it was a mile and a half.
I looked at it after.
Yeah, it was.
But
it was
we
a walk.
were walking and we were
walk.
passing people who were like, oh, I hate walking. And like the little nerd in me wanted to be like, but we're bipedal. That's what we're made to do.
Well,
like,
you know what's funny that talking about this concert, because this was an awesome experience. This was in Tampa, the Metallica concert in Tampa. And it was hot as hell. It was hot. The concert started at 6, so the sun was up. It's 90-some degrees, Florida, freaking afternoon. And people were literally melting, walking in. And they were walking from I didn't even know it was a mile and a half till you told me. I'm like, oh, this is just a little walk to us, you know? Perks of taking care of yourself. And you get free parking. You ain't got to pay no $60 for parking to be right next to the thing and sit in traffic 1 hour to pay $60 to then sit in traffic another hour to be able to get out. So just saying.
Yep.
Anyway, you're right. Man, I think, how do I say this? Your body, the further away you get from the natural processes that your body was meant for, the sicker you get.
Yep.
Okay. So if you're, the body's meant for movement, the body's meant to, be exposed to the elements, the body's meant to sweat, all these things, the further away we get from that, the sicker we get as a population. People that are living closer to the original design, eating from nature more, moving around more, exposing themselves to the outdoors, they don't tend to deal with the same things that people that live completely away from the design, meaning you're always indoors, you never see the light of day, you blue light bomb yourself 27 hours a day, you eat everything in a box, everything highly processed. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And we have to acknowledge and give credence to, hey, there's a certain way that nature or evolution or God designed this thing to work, and we have to acknowledge it and, pay homage and pay the dues to it by lining our lives up as close as we can to the original design. We can argue, tinfoil hat, that modern society is essentially being constructed to pull us away from the original design. And therefore, we're getting what we get, which is sicker and sicker and sicker. This goes back to our episode, the return to the old school type of thing, where it's like, hey, we weren't dealing with the stuff we're dealing with now 100 years ago. So what were they doing, or what were they not doing that we're doing, or what were they doing that we're not doing now, whatever, that we're sicker than they were. You see what I'm saying? Because we got some good advances. Hey, dysentery isn't a thing. Yay, whatever. You got some antibiotic you can take. Yay,
we
penicillin.
did the organ trade, we wouldn't die as readily.
Exactly. Hey, penicillin, that sort of thing. But cancer wasn't a thing back then. Not the way it is now. Heart disease wasn't a thing back then. Not the way it is now. So imagine living in the most advanced society to date that we know of, because maybe, maybe there were more advanced societies and they got this straight.
I mean, the pyramids are a thing. What if it was more advanced back then?
I don't know, man. What were those pyramids doing? What were they doing up in Machu Picchu? But imagine living in the most advanced society to date and dying of the easiest stuff to prevent.
Oof.
Come on, y'all. Like, you're not suing this?
It's like we have all these advancements and you died from a complication of not moving your body and eating natural food
You
enough.
died of the easiest stuff to prevent. Like, what are we talking about here?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And granted, we have to acknowledge, too, that there's a whole bunch of stuff that is around us that is working against us unbeknownst to the majority of us. And even people like us that are aware, there's still a bunch of stuff that is working against us that we don't have we can't help but be exposed to because of the way things are built. So all that to say, get right.
Get right. Oh, gosh.
Acknowledge the design. Acknowledge the natural order of things.
So I think the reason why I posed that question or that quote to you to then see how you would respond to it is because I think a lot of people are trying to, I can't think of the word. So they're trying to hijack the natural processes of our body to achieve the goal because they are not disciplined enough to honor what needs to be done at a very basic level.
Yeah, so we're turning everything into a hack.
Right.
Everything's a hack. Everything's a shortcut. Everything's we're looking for the easy way out around, and that's becoming the default setting.
Yes.
Instead of being like, hey, we need to peel it back. This is the way this is meant to work. Why don't we just follow the natural order of this?
So before, obviously I would say before going on a medication, but if you're so far gone that a medication is needed, like your blood pressure's 200 over 130, go on a blood pressure medication. Okay. But if it's starting to creep up, if you're starting to trend into unhealthiness, like we talked about with Danielle, fasting insulin can give you a heads up 13 years prior. Fasting blood glucose gives you a heads up 3 years prior. If we know way in advance we're starting to trend away, paying attention to the foods you're eating, the environment you're exposed to, how are you sleeping, how much water are you drinking, how are you moving your body, how are you managing your stress, paying attention to those things, being disciplined to know like, hey, I need to optimize these things in my current life, however it is, to then maintain health. Because we had health, right? When we're kids, we have health. And then it starts to degrade. So how can we maintain it? And moving forward in that direction and not jumping right away for this supplement, this peptide, this cold plunge. Like, I don't need to exercise if I sauna 3 days a week, And so looking at yourself, looking at what you're doing day to day, how are you actively participating in your health, not outsourcing it, but actively participating in it. And then once that's like to your capacity of what you can do in whatever chapter of life you're in, then we bring in helpers.
Yeah, don't talk to me about supplements if you're still nourishing yourself from a drive-through window. Again, you'll hear me say that a lot. I had a kid ask me about supplementation, and I'm like, what are you currently eating? He's like, well, I don't eat enough. I'm like, okay, then we're done.
Yeah.
We need to talk about how are you going to eat more.
I had somebody ask me for supplementation recommendations because they did not want to eat.
I had somebody ask me for supplementation recommendations because they didn't want to eat as well.
It was you asked me for this person. I was just trying to keep it more ambiguous on who it was.
Oh, there you go. So yes, we're talking about the same person. But that's a problem. That's a problem.
And what did I say? I said, I will not make supplement recommendations if they are not willing to nourish themselves appropriately with diet.
And when this person asked me that, it was a gut punch to me because we'll save this for another episode, because this person is on a medication that doesn't allow him to eat as normal. So but then we created a situation where he doesn't even want.
He's afraid to eat.
He's afraid to eat. What are we talking about here?
That's an eating disorder.
That's an eating disorder, and this person's not young. So now we're grown to be getting eating disorders. You know what I'm saying? So we'll talk about that in depth in another episode. But anyway, it's crazy that it's so easy to fall for the hack and really overlook all the low hanging fruit. Like you have these apples and oranges and mangoes and all this nourishing stuff that's like right here, boop, and you could just grab it and just start doing that stuff. But you're looking up at the top of the tree like, man,
how do I climb that?
How do I climb that over there and get that fruit over there? And I'm just gonna ignore everything that's right here that could really do a lot for you. Like, listen, the cold plunging, the saunas, they're great. A lot of people that we're trying to get to change the landscape of health in this country, they might go a lifetime and a half and not ever need that with the amount of stuff that they can bring into their life to get healthy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And the water filter and all this stuff. You might not ever get there, but you're going to be a way better version of yourself if you get into this lower order stuff that, hey, it's going to require some discipline to be able to implement. Here's a word, dirty word, consistently. Okay? Consistently.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And so I think that with our company and Chiefs Lifestyle, we can really help people with that.
Of course. That's the whole goal here. Man, it's a fight. It's a fight. And I think...
Well, I think it's hard because we're not flashy, right? We're not like, come work with us and you get this. And in 6 weeks, we can do a side-by-side weight loss review. And I see all these grabby things that people are publicizing. And I don't want us to be about that.
No, I don't care about that.
I want us to be like, I don't care if you work with us for 1 month or a year, like whatever you need. But if we can help you become more disciplined in your day-to-day and see what you need to prioritize, maybe what you're missing, or just help you figure it out. Sometimes you need to talk things out. You need to bounce off ideas, try things out, trial and error, have support with that. We're here for it.
Yeah. I'll end it with this because I always say that, hey, if you get healthier, there becomes a pay it forward thing where it's like, let's say we help a mom become healthier. We go back to Kara's example where now she's displaying and modeling certain behaviors and her 5 kids are witnessing this. And I'm excited for their future.
Yeah.
Because now they're like, they think working out's exciting. Being outside is exciting. She sent me a video the other day.
Having muscles are exciting.
Having muscle is exciting. Eating steak is exciting. Eating carrots. Boom. I don't want candy. I want carrots. Wow. I'm like, yo, you're raising superhumans. They're going to be superhumans in the future because people are going to be so unhealthy that people that grew up like this are going to just
Plus Kara's
dominate.
like 6 feet tall.
Yes, and they're just they're going to be specimens at whatever it is that they choose to do.
And her husband Tommy's like,
their brains are going to develop better, like all this stuff. So my thing is, this is an uphill battle of changing the landscape. So you get one person, they model a behavior for 3 or 4 other people. Those people model the behavior for 4 other people, and now you have this revolution and this changing of the tide that is happening. Listen, there are a lot of people talking about health and how messed up it is in this country. We need more. We need more. It's not enough, okay? There's 330 million of us, maybe a little bit more, given current circumstances, but there's a couple 100 million of us, we need all the help we can get to change this thing because I just heard a statistic before we came here, and then we'll wrap up with this, that only 4% of the population is in the gyms. Isn't that crazy? Only 4% of the population.
Only 6% of the population is metabolically healthy.
Yep, and only 4% of the population is in the gyms.
Aren't even going to gyms.
Yeah, and then 75% of that 4%, this is, is only focused on aesthetics.
Oof.
They don't care about the performance. They don't care about function, all that. So we got some work to do, y'all. Because obviously our thing is, strength and health, performance. That's where the capability comes from. We're not 6-pack. 10% body fat. That's not where we're at. That's going to come by consequence of doing the proper things.
Yep.
Because if you do get down there, you get a 6-pack or whatever. If you do, most of people do not need it to be healthier and to be better and to live way better lives. But if you do get down there, it's going to be because you're really healthy, not because you starved yourself into it or anything like that. So all that to say,
yeah, and I saw one of my friends who's a dietitian posted something that I thought was really impactful, that it was like unpopular opinion. Being in the best shape of your life is not always synonymous with being the healthiest version of yourself.
Interesting.
Okay? Because a lot of people think best shape of my life is the thinnest, the least amount of body fat,
Yeah.
the visual aesthetics. That's the best shape of my life. Whereas I would argue the best shape of your life is the healthiest version of yourself. So how do you marry those two? And it may not be the weight you have in mind or the visual body that you have in mind.
That's our territory.
Yeah.
That's where we live. How do we marry best shape of your life with the healthiest and make that the same thing?
Yeah.
I don't care if you can run a 6-minute mile, like I heard some douche talk about on freaking Instagram. I don't care if you can run a 6-minute mile if you're eating freaking garbage food all the time and all this stuff and drinking and all that stuff. I don't care if you have a 6-pack, if your testosterone is 90, and I don't care that you do high roxes every week if you're basically have the testosterone of a 2-year-old. Like these are the things that, how do we marry the two?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It is, that's where we live. And that's a conversation that we shall continue to have.
Yeah.
And put that concept
started a whole
together.
nother rant, but we're over an hour in, so let's stop.
Yeah, my boy pissed me off. We should definitely go in on that because I was like, oh, I love it. Training to run a 6-minute mile is great, but you have to be a douche about ingredients in the food. Gotcha. Whatever, bro. Anyway, that's it for today, guys. We're going to wrap it up right there before we keep going. And
yeah. So like I always say, questions, comments, feedback. You want to have a little debate, email us at info@achievethelifestyle.com. Shoot us a DM on Instagram @achievethelifestyle. You can check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. And are we on TikTok?
Yeah, we're on the Tiki-Talkie. We're on the Tiki-Talkie, but we got our first video taken down from the Tiki-Talkies. Chinese Communist Party doesn't like Tiki-Talkies that talk about informed consent, I guess.
Well, it's not a thing in China, is it?
It is not a thing in China.
So we violated that, obviously.
Yep.
But we'd love to hear from you. Please rate and review our podcast. It helps us. It helps put us out there so other people can hear us. And if, you want to say how great we are in the reviews, or if you want to leave a wacky comment, whatever you want, we're here for it.
Yes, sir. With that in mind, we out.
Have a great day.
Thanks for listening to the PharmaPhobic podcast. If you found this conversation interesting, which I know you did, make sure to follow us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And also make sure to check us out on Instagram @AchieveTheLifestyle. And if you're interested in pursuing a stronger, healthier, more capable version of yourself, check out our website @AchieveTheLifestyle.com.
The PharmaPhobic podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. The views expressed are those of the hosts and guests and do not constitute medical, legal, or professional advice. Always consult a qualified healthcare provider before making any medical or wellness decisions. While we discuss pharmaceutical, holistic, and alternative health topics, our content is not a substitute for professional medical guidance.